The nature of intuition. Unveil the essence of intuition, its origins, and its role in human consciousness. A human being comes from nature. It may not always feel that way because we've built up a world around us. But that world is artificial. When we lock ourselves into cities, when we sit in buildings apart from trees and rivers and miss out on the air and the sky, it's often difficult for us to feel ourselves as a human being. But the very reality is that originally, in the beginning, we were very much born from nature. That above all, even though we have a mother, right, from whom we were birthed, nature itself forms and is the ultimate mother. Now, why is this so important? Because intuition is part of the human design. And so intuition also comes from nature. And the way that we connect to our intuition most profoundly is by understanding and connecting to the most natural, intrinsic part of us deep inside. So let's go further into this concept of human beings as nature. If you think of an ant, if you're in a park watching an ant on the ground walking, it's so easy to understand the context of an ant in an anthill inside the ground and understand the phenomena of nature and the role the ants play inside of that ecosystem. But human beings dominate the earth, so it's often difficult for us to have this wide-scape perspective on who we are fundamentally inside of nature. And yet, nature is watching us, and we're also observing nature. What I mean is, we are responding to nature, and nature is also responding to us. I remember going on a hike and sitting way up in the mountains and looking down and being able to observe the animals moving in circles around the human beings moving through the paths. That means that those animals, though we never met them on the path, were fully aware of its environment, though hidden, and of the human beings walking through their space. Human beings are no different. Though at times we may feel disconnected, the reality is that that same phenomena is happening inside of us all the time. And that's what I like to call our intuition. It defies logic and it defies thinking. It defies our emotion. It goes beyond all of that, gathering information from our environment to help direct us, to act as a GPS, both protecting us and ensuring our survival, and also directing us ultimately in the direction of our own growth and completion. Fundamentally, you can think of your intuition as a function of the human brain, but we need to take a few steps back in order to understand exactly how this intuition works inside of the brain and the significance of all of that. So to understand fundamentally how a human being works, I want you to think about electricity. Let's think about a human being and its relationship to electricity. If you think about how electricity works, there are many ways to generate electricity. For example, there's wind electricity or water electricity. So for example, you might have a windmill, and that windmill would go, and gather speed from the wind and cause ions to generate electricity, right, in a generator. Or for example, through a waterfall. If you went to Niagara Falls, you would experience the force of the falls coming down and then also generating ions, causing turbines to move and generating something we call electricity. Now, the falls itself, even though it helps to generate electricity, it's not the electricity we're speaking of itself. You can't see electricity with your eyes, but we know that it's working. And we know that it's working because we can turn a light bulb on. We can drive a car. There are all kinds of things that we're doing with electricity, right? In fact, our whole world is fundamentally functioning in the 21st century because of the invention of electricity, which is actually not an invention. It intrinsically exists in nature. We just figured out how to harness it and actually use it. Not different from the intuition. So let's think about a human being in our relationship to electricity. So we have all these different ways to gather and generate electricity. Well, a human being has its physical body, which you can see in the 3D, right? We have arms and legs, a head, feet, right? And hands, the things that we can see. But there's also this amazing part of a human being that is electrical. And how do we know that there are electrical impulses moving throughout a human being? Well, if somebody walks into your 3 feet of space, you feel it. And the reason you feel it is because you have an electromagnetic field. And we know about magnetism because when you bring 2 magnets together, right, they either repel each other or they come together. The same feelings that we have when we're in front of people that we feel either attracted to or that we feel repelled from. So we have this electromagnetic field, something that incorporates magnetism and electricity. And that electromagnetic field doesn't just take up 3 feet of space. In fact, it extends much further. And that's why you can have a friend on the entire other side of the planet and you can feel that they're thinking about you, pick up the phone and call them, and they can say to you, "Hey, I was just thinking about you." And that's because inside of this electromagnetism, there is light, right? So light, in a way, is a form of electricity. Light, sound, and vibration fundamentally are forms of electricity, meaning they are interchangeable, meaning light can become sound, can become vibration, vibration can become sound, can become light. So what do we know about light, right? We know that light travels fast and it travels far. In fact, if you want to get to the other side of the universe, we say such and such planet or galaxy is such and such light years away. The light takes this much time to reach the earth. The light of the sun takes this much time to reach the earth. Just that understanding conceptually means that light has the capacity to travel eons far into the universe, further than we can even really conceptualize or fully understand. And so if a human being is a conductor of light, that means a human being's electricity, right? Energy, electrical energy, electrical magnetism has the capacity to both affect and respond to an environment that extends throughout the entire earth and the universe. Isn't it astounding? If you begin to understand yourself as a human being in this capacity, it really truly is a revolution in consciousness, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. The reason it's a revolution in a consciousness is because consciousness, fundamentally defined, means one's awareness of itself. And as a human being's awareness of itself grows and becomes very big, so does the human being's capacity to actually utilize, right, its electromagnetic field in the ways that it is aware of itself. This is intuitive power. This means that we have the capacity to pick up information from throughout the universe, throughout the earth, from all the people around us, interpret it, process it inside of the human brain. Then our human brain can generate messages inside of us that tell us how to act upon that information. Isn't it amazing? This is what the human brain has the capacity to do. And that is why no one could ever really quantify the potential of the human brain. That's why the human brain is constantly pushing against limits we previously thought we had, and that we realize once we go inside and receive the information, translate it and utilize it and bring it into action, that we can reach frontiers that we never thought imaginable. Your intuition does that for you. It doesn't just have the capacity to work for you on a personal level. It has a capacity to work for the earth. It has the capacity to work for community. It has the capacity to work for your family. It has the capacity to work for the entire universe. I want to talk a little bit more about how our electromagnetic field works. Just like there are many different types of facilities that can produce energy, your body has many different types of energetic structures. One of those structures we call the electromagnetic field, and it moves like this, right? Like a torus, in the shape of a torus. But we have many other different kinds of energetic structures. I'm also going to call them electrical structures. They're structures that gather and generate energy and then utilize it for our human existence. We also have something called chakras. There's many, many more than that. But for the purposes that we have today, understanding that there's a torus around us, understanding we have an electromagnetic field, understanding that there is something called chakras is plenty. So what do these energetic structures do? They do exactly what an electrical generator does. They gather energy into the center and then they distribute it. And they're important because those structures play to different functions that we have as a human being, and the different kinds of functions, for example, that the brain executes. So a human being, from an executive point of view, can do many different things, from utilizing our body to walk, to communicating love to another person, to building a building, to eating food, to digesting. There are all these things that we do. We have many different types of intelligences. We have emotional intelligence, intellectual intelligence, let's say, knowledge. There are just so many different facets to a human being and what it is capable of. And all these different energetic structures and energetic functions, electrical structures, electrical functions, play right into those abilities. So why is this so important to your intuition? Because your intuition is using the strength of all your energetic structures and all your energetic functions to gather information. How do your energetic structures gather information? Well, electrical signals are constantly being emanated towards you from your environment and the universe. And your energetic structures and functions have the capacity to respond to them. And they respond to them in a way by feeling them, right? And that the way that they feel them is they feel a certain impulse coming at it. There's this intelligence we have inside ourselves, which is to become one with, or to emulate or imitate what an electrical signal is doing. That's why in social environments, for example, when we meet other people, many times we start gesturing or talking like them. It almost happens unconsciously. And the reason that we're doing that is in order to create communion, in order to create connection. We start vibrating or becoming one with the other person. It's a way of understanding who they are inside of us. It's not that we are who they are, but we now understand who they are. And once we have that information inside of us, once we've gathered that information through that oneness experience inside of us, then we can appropriately respond to what they are showing us about what they want, who they are. We can define ourselves in context to our environment. We are doing this on multiple levels all the time. What does that mean? It means that our brain has the capacity to become one with a million things all together, all at once, and gather the information toward us, cause us to feel a certain way or to have a certain thought, and then on top of creating understanding about the environment around us, go through the entire process of processing all of those electrical signals and deciding within us what the best course of action that would be most authentic for us would be. But none of this is possible if we're not connected to how we feel and to the impulses that are coming through us inside of us. So how do we experience intuitive messages? This is very important. A lot of people think or mix up their intuition with their thoughts, and they mix up their intuition with their emotions. And your intuition is neither of those. This can be very confusing because for many people who feel that they identify most with their emotional life and haven't necessarily had deeper feelings beyond what the emotional body has to offer. One can then be convinced, they are then convinced, that their emotions, being all the feelings that they have, must coincide or be aligned with their intuition. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. Let me explain a little bit about how emotions work. Emotions are like an ocean, and underneath the ocean, you have something called a fault line, and at those fault lines, you have something called the tectonic plates. Tectonic plates are responsible for earthquakes. They're also responsible for the formation of mountains. Now, as you can imagine, once there's even just a little bit of friction on the bottom of the ocean, that impact, the energy or the force produced from that friction has to go somewhere, and it gets absorbed through the water, and as it rises up through the ocean, it can become a huge tsunami in the middle of a great ocean. Now, by the time that massive wave in the middle of the ocean reaches the shore, it's just a little wave on a beach. Now, of course, we have some more dramatic beaches where the water is crashing, and that would represent a tantrum or some more dramatic emotional reactions coming out consciously in our lives. But for the most part, it's just a little wave, and we feel something, a little bit of something that may be a little bit uncomfortable, and then the wave recedes itself and it becomes part of the ocean. What does that mean? The ocean is just there. Your emotions are the ocean. That means your emotions are just a means of processing impact. What type of impact? Impact from the electrical signals you're receiving from your environment. And depending on the nature of the electrical signals that you're receiving, they get absorbed into the ocean and produce specific types of emotion as a means of processing out whatever those electrical signals were producing. That means that your emotions are going to change every day, all the time, up and down, round and round. Your emotions are never going to be reliable. Even joy is an emotion. And some days you're going to feel happy, some days you're going to feel sad, some days you're going to feel angry. It's going to go round and round. And that's why if we choose things or make significant decisions in our life based on a temporary emotional state, we're going to be in trouble because we're not choosing something from an intuitive place. Instead, we're choosing something based on how we're processing information from our environment, as opposed to the indelible truth we carry in our soul, the truth that charters us towards our own growth and completion. That's why your intuition will never be emotional. If you think about the moments when you've had an intuitive hit, if you really think about it, it's never been emotional. It's just been, I know this. This is what it is. Whether I liked the information or not, whether I wanted it or not, I just knew, right? It wasn't up or down. It wasn't round or round. It just was the truth. Now, of course, the choice we make after that can be driven by our emotions. And sometimes, even though we know something, we make a certain choice that may not be in our best interest based on our emotions. But if we had the power to make our choices based on an intuitive response rather than our temporary emotions, our life and our manifestations would look very different. Intuition is also not your thoughts. I want you to think of your brain in 3 layers. You have something called your brainstem, and your brainstem is the inner core of your brain that is directly correlated with your spinal cord. And now, surrounding the brainstem, you have your cerebellum. And your cerebellum is responsible for your emotions and the condition of your internal organs. And then you have your cerebral cortex. And your cerebral cortex is responsible for your conscious thoughts. Like, for example, I'm hungry right now. I think I want to go eat. But the impulse for hunger is coming all the way from your brainstem. Now, it's not that you couldn't have a thought that was produced first by an intuitive impulse, but most often, most people's thoughts are things they are picking up from outside of themselves, because they're electrical impulses that are floating, right? And messages through marketing and other means floating all around us from our environment all the time. And so there's a very big difference between an impulse that arises from within and emerges through the brainstem and sends a message as a thought form toward us, do this, between that and I just have a lot of busy thoughts because I've been watching TV. I was talking to a friend, so my focus has been here and there and everywhere, you say? And whatever you focus on, you become one with. You vibrate like that thing. Those are not impulses coming from within you. They're coming from outside you and from the environment surrounding you. Those things cannot be your intuition. Your intuition is a GPS for your life, connected to your soul, which means that your soul, which has light, which has your very best interests in mind, controls your intuition and is showing you exactly where you need to go, what you need to experience, and what you need to do in order for you to attain the things you want most deep in your heart, the soul's completion. The concept of completion, you can see it in nature. Trees go through growth cycles, right? They grow, they develop seeds and flowers. The seeds come down, make more trees. If you watch trees in nature, no matter what type of tree it is, it's always busy fulfilling its purpose, even through the harshest of circumstances, even though a storm comes, even though cities get built, even through the cement, a tree will keep trying to grow. A human being is no different. We go through cycles of things, and we continuously aim to complete those cycles. The completion of a cycle, what that looks like for a human being, means that whatever conflicts that we've endured in our lives, throughout our existence, we are always constantly trying to come to terms with them, trying to complete them, trying to get the lesson, and trying to move on. And by doing that, we gradually elevate ourselves to higher and higher levels of consciousness. And through the elevation of ourselves and the human consciousness, our soul, which has pure light, is able to enter into the driving seat of our life and ultimately the driving seat of humanity. Now, the soul's power is that it has the power to produce your own survival. It also has the power to help you manifest a life that you truly desire. It has the power to help others. It has the power to heal the earth. And so there's this tremendous power inside, always waiting to emerge. And if a human being is really alive, and even someone connected to themselves, they can feel it, most especially when we're children, when we're young, and we feel the pulse of life through us. We feel that instinct, intuition, I should say, and urge to move towards it, to strive towards it, towards our own happiness.